Edward Collins stood in his villa's garden, holding a crumpled piece of paper that would destroy everything he believed about his life in Thailand. The afternoon sun beat down on the lush tropical plants his wife Sarinya had carefully selected, the same plants tended by the gardener who had just slipped him this note with trembling hands before quickly walking away. The message was written in careful English, each word clearly labored over. "Your wife has another house. She lives there on weekends with another foreign man. I am sorry to tell you this. Be careful." Edward's hands shook as he read the note a second time, then a third, as if repetition might change the meaning of the words. His 63-year-old mind struggled to process what he was reading. Sarinya, his wife of 2 years, the woman who managed every aspect of their household with such efficiency and care, the woman he trusted completely with his finances and his life. Could she possibly be living a double life? This morning had been like every other morning in the villa they shared in Hua Hin. Sarinya had prepared breakfast, discussed the day's household tasks with their maid, and reminded Edward about the property tax payment that was supposedly due at the local government office. She had kissed him goodbye and said she was meeting a client to show properties she worked part-time as a property agent, or so she claimed. Edward had believed everything. Why wouldn't he? Sarinya was intelligent, professional, caring. She had transformed his retirement from lonely isolation into a comfortable domestic life. She managed their household finances, handled communication with Thai officials and service providers, and made him feel cared for in ways his ex-wife never had during 28 years of marriage. But now, standing in this garden with the note clutched in his hand, Edward felt the first tremors of doubt that would eventually reveal the catastrophic truth. Over 2 years, Sarinya had systematically stolen $900,000 from him, nearly 2/3 of his retirement savings, while maintaining the perfect performance of a devoted Thai wife. She had controlled his finances so completely, filtered his communications so effectively, and manipulated his trust so skillfully that Edward had never suspected anything was wrong. And the gardener's note suggested something even more devastating. Sarinya was running the same scam on at least one other foreign man simultaneously, living with him in a luxury villa purchased with money stolen from Edward, and probably others like him. Edward looked toward the house where Sarinya would return that evening, smiling and affectionate, asking about his day and discussing dinner plans. Everything about their life together had been a lie, and he had been too trusting, too lonely, too desperate for companionship to see what was happening until it was far too late. If you've been enjoying the stories I create, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Your support is crucial for the growth of this channel and helps me dedicate time to making these videos despite my commitment to a full-time job. Thank you for being here. Edward Collins, everyone called him Eddie, had spent his entire adult life building success in the technology industry, only to discover in his 60s that professional achievement meant nothing without someone to share it with. Born in Chicago in 1962, Eddie had been fascinated by computers from an early age. He studied computer science at the University of Illinois in the early 1982, graduating just as personal computers were beginning to transform business and society. He immediately entered the software industry, working for several tech companies in the Chicago area before recognizing an opportunity that would define his career. In 1992, at age 30, Eddie founded Collins Software Solutions, a company specializing in custom database management systems for mid-sized businesses. The timing was perfect. Companies were computerizing their operations, but needed software tailored to their specific needs rather than generic off-the-shelf products. Eddie's ability to understand client requirements and translate them into functional software gave his company a competitive advantage. Collins Software Solutions grew steadily over 2 decades. Eddie was not chasing explosive growth or venture capital funding. He preferred building a sustainable business that generated consistent profits and served clients well. By his 50s, the company employed 23 people and had annual revenue of approximately $3 million. Eddie had married young to Margaret, a woman he met through mutual friends when he was 28. They had one son, Michael, born in 1993. For many years, the marriage appeared stable, if not particularly passionate. Margaret worked as a paralegal, and they maintained a comfortable upper-middle-class lifestyle in a Chicago suburb, good house, reliable income, occasional vacations. But the marriage had been dying slowly for years. Margaret resented Eddie's focus on building his business. The the long hours he worked, the way his mind was always occupied with technical problems, even when he was physically present at home. Eddie resented Margaret's constant criticism, her inability to appreciate the financial security his work provided, her emotional coldness. By their 20th anniversary, they were essentially roommates sharing a house and co-parenting their teenage son. Michael could feel the tension even though his parents tried to hide it, and he spent increasing amounts of time at friends' houses or involved in school activities rather than being home with his unhappy parents. The marriage finally ended in 2015 when Eddie was 53. The divorce was expensive and bitter, with disputes over asset division and Michael's college expenses. Margaret received half the value of their house and a substantial settlement from their shared assets. Michael, then 22 and finishing college, sided primarily with his mother, viewing Eddie as someone who had prioritized work over family for decades. The divorce left Eddie emotionally devastated and socially isolated. He had spent 25 years building a marriage and a business, and the marriage had collapsed while the business consumed all his time and energy. He continued running Collins Software Solutions, but the joy he had once taken in solving technical challenges had evaporated. He was going through the motions, working because it was the only thing he knew how to do. In 2019, Eddie received an acquisition offer from a larger software company looking to expand their client base and acquire his technical expertise. They offered $1,400,000 for Collins Software Solutions. After considerable deliberation, Eddie accepted. He was 57 years old, tired from decades of constant work, and ready to consider what retirement might look like. But retire to what? His relationship with his son Michael was distant and strained. His ex-wife had remarried and seemed genuinely happy in ways she had never been during their marriage. His few friends were mostly business associates rather than people he was close to emotionally. The prospect of spending his remaining years alone in Chicago, watching winter after winter pass while his life became progressively smaller and lonelier, filled him with dread. A business associate named Tom, who had retired to Thailand several years earlier, planted the seed that would eventually lead Eddie to Hua Hin. Tom spoke enthusiastically about his life in Thailand, the warm weather, the low cost of living, the welcoming expatriate community, and yes, the possibility of finding companionship with Thai women who valued older Western men. "Eddie, you're going to waste your retirement sitting alone in Chicago," Tom said during a phone conversation. "You've got plenty of money, no real ties keeping you in the States, and decades potentially ahead of you. Why not try something different? Hua Hin is beautiful beach town, much quieter than Pattaya or Bangkok, attracting a more mature crowd of expats. Come visit for a few weeks, see what you think." In January 2020, Eddie took Tom's advice and flew to Thailand for a 3-week exploratory visit. He stayed in a hotel in Hua Hin and spent his days exploring the town, meeting other expatriates, and trying to imagine whether this could become his permanent home. Hua Hin appealed to Eddie immediately. The town felt manageable, large enough to offer amenities and international restaurants, but small enough to feel relaxed rather than overwhelming. The beach was beautiful. The cost of living was remarkably low compared to Chicago, and the weather was paradise compared to Illinois winters. But what surprised Eddie most was how comfortable he felt among the expatriate community. Many were men in their 60s who had retired to Thailand after careers in business or technical fields. They were intelligent, educated, and looking for the same things. Eddie was seeking comfortable retirement, warm weather, and escape from the isolation they had experienced in their home countries. By the end of his 3-week visit, Eddie had decided Thailand would become his permanent home. He returned to Chicago, sold his condominium, liquidated his remaining business interests, and arranged his finances for retirement abroad. After taxes and expenses, he had approximately $1,300,000 in accessible savings and investments, more than enough to fund a comfortable retirement in Thailand if managed carefully. In August 2020, Eddie moved to Hua Hin permanently, renting a condominium while he searched for a villa to purchase. He was 60 years old, recently divorced, estranged from his son, and hoping that Thailand would offer the peace and companionship that had eluded him throughout his successful but lonely life in America. What Eddie did not know was that within weeks of arriving in Hua Hin, he would meet a woman who would transform his retirement dream into a nightmare. Sirinya Kittipong would present herself as exactly the kind of intelligent, professional Thai woman, Eddie had hoped to meet someone who could be both partner and helper in navigating his new life in Thailand. And over 2 years, she would systematically steal $900,000 from him while maintaining such perfect control over his finances and communications that Eddie would have no idea he was being robbed until a terrified gardener slipped him a note warning him about his wife's secret life. Eddie's search for a villa to purchase in Hua Hin led him to Golden Horizon Properties, a real estate agency near the beach that specialized in helping foreign retirees find suitable homes. The agency's office was modern and professional, with photographs of available properties displayed on large screens and English-speaking agents who understood the specific needs of Western clients. Eddie was assigned to work with Surinya Kittipong, a 35-year-old Thai woman who introduced herself as one of the agency's senior property agents. Surinya was poised and professional, dressed in business casual attire that suggested competence rather than trying to be seductive. She spoke excellent English with minimal accent and asked intelligent questions about Eddie's requirements, budget, preferred location, desired amenities. What impressed Eddie most was Surinya's straightforward manner. She did not try to oversell properties or push him toward expensive options that would generate higher commissions. Instead, she listened carefully to his needs and showed him properties that genuinely matched his criteria. When Eddie expressed concern about Thai property laws that prevented foreigners from owning land, Surinya explained the options clearly and honestly. "You have 3 main choices," Surinya explained during their first meeting. "First, you can purchase a condominium in your own name. Thai law allows this if the building is at least 51% Thai-owned. Second, you can lease land on a 30-year lease and own the house built on that land. Third, you can purchase through a Thai spouse or partner, though this requires complete trust because the property will be in their name." Surinya's honesty about the risks of the third option immediately established her credibility in Eddie's mind. A less scrupulous agent might have minimized those risks to facilitate a sale. Surinya was clearly more concerned with protecting her clients than maximizing commissions. Over the next 3 weeks, Surinya showed Eddie approximately 15 properties, a mixture of condominiums and villas in various neighborhoods around Hua Hin. She was patient with his indecision, never pressuring him to make quick decisions, and she provided detailed information about each property's history, any legal complications, and the reputation of the developers or builders. During this process, Eddie and Surinya developed a rapport that went beyond simple professional interaction. They would talk during drives between properties about their backgrounds, their perspectives on Thai culture and Western expatriate life, their hopes for the future. Eddie learned that Surinya had grown up in Bangkok, studied hospitality and business management at university, and had worked in hotel management before transitioning to property sales. "I like helping foreigners find good homes in Thailand," Surinya explained. "Many agents just see clients as commissions, but I believe if I help people properly, they become long-term contacts who refer friends and come back for additional services. It is better business to build relationships than to chase quick profits." This philosophy resonated deeply with Eddie. He had built Collins Software Solutions on similar principles, prioritizing client relationships and long-term value over short-term revenue maximization. Surinya seemed to share his business values in ways that made him trust her judgment. One afternoon in late September, Surinya showed Eddie a villa that immediately captured his attention. It was a 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood, about 10 minutes from the beach, with a small garden, modern kitchen, and enough space for Eddie to have a home office. The villa was priced at 9 million baht, approximately $280,000, which was within Eddie's budget and seemed reasonable for the location and quality. "This is my favorite property for you," Surinya said as they toured the house. "The location is quiet but not isolated. The construction quality is good. The price is fair, not cheap but not overpriced. And the owner is motivated to sell quickly because he is relocating to Bangkok for work." Eddie could see himself living in this villa. It was exactly what he had imagined when he decided to retire to Thailand, comfortable but not ostentatious, in a peaceful neighborhood, with enough space to host visitors if his son Michael ever decided to visit. "I want to make an offer," Eddie said. "What do you think is appropriate given that the owner is motivated?" Surinya considered carefully. "I think we can offer 8.5 million baht, about $265,000. The owner might counter at 8.7 million. We should be able to close somewhere in that range." Over the next 2 weeks, Sarinya negotiated on Eddie's behalf with skill and patience. The owner indeed countered at 8.7 million baht, and after some back and forth, they agreed on 8.6 million baht, approximately $268,000. Sarinya handled all the paperwork, coordinated with lawyers, and explained each step of the process clearly, so Eddie understood what he was signing. But there was a complication that Eddie had anticipated but not fully considered. As a foreigner, he could not own the land the villa sat on. The property would need to be purchased either through a long-term lease arrangement or through a Thai national's name. Sarinya explained both options, noting that the lease arrangement would cost additional legal fees and would only provide 30 years of secure occupancy. Many foreign men purchase through their Thai wives or long-term partners, Sarinya said carefully, but this requires absolute trust. Legally, the property belongs entirely to the Thai person whose name is on the title. If the relationship ends badly, the foreigner has very limited legal protection for their investment. Eddie appreciated Sarinya's honesty about the risks, but he felt stuck. He did not have a Thai wife or partner, and the lease arrangement seemed complicated and limited. When he mentioned this frustration to Sarinya, she thought for a moment before making a suggestion that would change everything. "I could purchase the property in my name as your agent," Sarinya said carefully. "We would have a legal contract establishing that I am holding the property on your behalf, that you have full rights to live there indefinitely, and that if you ever want to sell, you receive all proceeds. This is not uncommon for property agents helping foreign clients. I would charge you a small annual fee for this service, maybe 40,000 baht per year, about $1,200, to cover the administrative burden and liability I would be taking on." This suggestion seemed reasonable to Eddie. Sarinya was a licensed professional property agent, not someone he had met in a bar or through casual acquaintance. They would have legal contracts protecting his interests, and the annual fee was modest, given the service she would be providing. "Let me consult with a lawyer before we proceed," Eddie said. "Not because I do not trust you, but because I want to make sure we structure this properly to protect both of us." Sarinya agreed immediately, even recommending a lawyer who specialized in property transactions involving foreign buyers. This willingness to involve legal professionals further convinced Eddie that Sarinya was trustworthy and operating professionally, rather than trying to take advantage of him. The lawyer Eddie consulted reviewed the proposed arrangement and confirmed it was legally valid, though he warned Eddie about the inherent risks. "You must understand that despite any contracts, the person whose name is on the property title has ultimate legal control," the lawyer explained. "If your relationship with Miss Sarinya ever becomes adversarial, recovering your investment will be difficult even with contracts in place. This arrangement requires complete trust." Eddie decided to proceed. Sarinya had been nothing but professional and honest throughout their interactions. She had a successful career and a reputation to protect. She had no reason to risk her professional standing by defrauding a client, and frankly, Eddie was tired of the complicated legal maneuvering and just wanted to buy the villa and start enjoying his retirement. In October 2020, the villa was purchased with Sarinya's name on the title deed and Eddie's money $268,000 paying for it. Legal contracts established Eddie's rights to occupy the property indefinitely and to receive all proceeds if it was ever sold. Sarinya received her first annual fee of 40,000 baht, and Eddie moved into his new home feeling satisfied that he had navigated a complex process successfully with the help of a competent professional. What Eddie did not understand was that he had just taken the first step into an elaborate trap. Sarinya was not a legitimate property agent. She was part of an organized network that specialized in long-term financial manipulation of foreign retirees. The villa purchase had been structured precisely to establish legal control over Eddie's property while creating the appearance of professional service. Over the next 2 years, Sarinya would use that initial trust to gain access to every aspect of Eddie's financial life, systematically stealing $900,000 while Eddie believed she was simply helping him manage his retirement in Thailand. For the first few months after moving into his villa, Eddie's life seemed perfect. The house was comfortable, the neighborhood was quiet, and he was finally experiencing the peaceful retirement he had envisioned. Sarinya would visit occasionally to check on the property and ensure Eddie was settling in well, and these visits were always professional and helpful. But gradually, the nature of their relationship began to shift. Sarinya started staying later during her visits, sharing meals with Eddie, discussing not just property matters but personal topics, their past relationships, their hopes for the future, their perspectives on life. Eddie found himself looking forward to these visits, enjoying Sarinya's company in ways that went beyond appreciating her professional assistance. In December 2020, about 2 months after Eddie moved into the villa, Sarinya arrived one evening clearly upset. When Eddie asked what was wrong, she explained that she had just ended a long-term relationship with a Thai man who had been unfaithful. She was emotionally devastated and financially stressed because they had shared an apartment and she now needed to find new accommodation quickly. Eddie felt sympathy for Sarinya's situation. She had been so helpful to him, and seeing her in distress triggered his protective instincts. "You can stay in the villa's guest room temporarily if you need a place while you search for an apartment," Eddie offered. "You have been so helpful to me. It is the least I can do to help you during a difficult time." Sarinya was grateful but hesitant. "Eddie, I do not want to impose on you or make you uncomfortable. We have a professional relationship and I do not want to complicate that." But Eddie insisted. Sarinya moved into the guest room temporarily, and within weeks, the temporary arrangement had become indefinite. She was helpful in ways Eddie had not anticipated: cooking meals, managing household staff, handling communication with Thai service providers and government offices. Her presence transformed the villa from a house Eddie lived in alone to a home that felt cared for. By February 2021, Eddie and Sarinya had become romantically involved. The transition felt natural rather than sudden. They were already living together, already sharing their daily lives, already dependent on each other in practical and emotional ways. Sarinya was affectionate without being overwhelming, attentive without being clingy, and she made Eddie feel valued in ways he had not experienced since the early years of his marriage to Margaret. In March 2021, Eddie suggested they should formalize their relationship by getting married. Sarinya was surprised and touched. "Eddie, you do not need to marry me just because we are living together," she said. "I am happy with our relationship as it is." But Eddie wanted the security and commitment that marriage represented. He had spent too many years in a cold marriage, followed by lonely years after divorce. Sarinya made him happy, and he wanted to build something permanent with her. They married in a small ceremony in April 2021, with a few expatriate friends attending and Sarinya's family traveling from Bangkok to participate. After the marriage, Sarinya gradually assumed control over the household's practical operations. She managed the gardener, the maid, and the various service providers who maintained the property. She handled payment of utility bills, property taxes, and the annual fees supposedly required by Thai authorities for foreigners residing in Thailand. She managed Eddie's visa renewals, ensuring all paperwork was filed correctly and on time. Eddie was grateful for this help. Thai bureaucracy was complex and conducted entirely in Thai language. Without Sarinya managing these matters, Eddie would have struggled to maintain legal residency and keep the household running smoothly. He saw her management of their daily life as exactly the kind of partnership he had hoped for when he married her. What Eddie did not recognize was that Sarinya's help was actually the mechanism through which she was beginning to steal from him. Every payment she made on his behalf provided opportunities for overcharging and pocketing the difference. Every interaction with government offices created chances to claim fees that did not actually exist. Every bill she paid could be inflated before Eddie ever saw the paperwork. In June 2021, Sarinya suggested they should open a joint bank account for household expenses. "Right now, you transfer money to me for bills and household costs," she explained. "But it would be easier and more transparent if we had a shared account where I can pay expenses directly, and you can see all the transactions clearly." The logic seemed sound to Eddie, and he appreciated Sarinya's emphasis on transparency. They opened a joint account at Capricorn Bank and initially funded it with $80,000 for household operating expenses. Sarinya would withdraw money to pay bills, staff salaries, and property maintenance costs, and Eddie could review the account statements to see where money was being spent. But what Eddie did not understand was that Thai joint accounts often allow either account holder to conduct transactions independently without requiring both signatures. Sarinya had specifically requested this type of account setup, explaining to the bank representative in Thai that her foreign husband did not speak Thai and would need her to manage transactions independently. The bank representative explained this arrangement to Surinya in Thai, but Surinya did not translate this information accurately to Eddie, allowing him to believe the account had protections, requiring joint authorization for major transactions. Over the following months, small amounts began disappearing from the joint account. The withdrawals were usually modest, 5,000 baht here, 10,000 baht there, amounts that could plausibly be explained by legitimate household expenses. Eddie occasionally reviewed the account statements but trusted that Surinya was managing their expenses appropriately. Surinya also began intercepting Eddie's mail and monitoring his phone and email communications. She would collect mail from their mailbox before Eddie saw it, claiming she wanted to handle any Thai language official documents. She configured Eddie's phone to forward copies of his emails to an account she controlled, explaining this was necessary for managing his visa documentation. She encouraged Eddie to add her as an authorized user on his American bank accounts so she could help monitor for fraudulent activity. Each of these control measures seemed helpful rather than threatening. Eddie was not technically sophisticated about phone security. He could not read Thai documents, and he appreciated having someone manage the administrative burden of maintaining his retirement life in Thailand. What he did not recognize was that Surinya was systematically gaining access to every aspect of his financial life, positioning herself to steal from him on a scale he would never detect until it was far too late. By the end of 2021, Surinya had created total control over Eddie's practical existence in Thailand. She managed all his communications with Thai authorities and service providers. She had access to his bank accounts and credit cards. She intercepted his mail and monitored his digital communications. She had established herself as the essential intermediary between Eddie and everything he needed to maintain his life in Hua Hin. And Eddie believed he had finally found what he had been seeking when he retired to Thailand, a devoted wife who cared for him, managed his household competently, and made him feel valued and comfortable in his new home. The trap had closed around him completely, and he remained entirely unaware that the woman sleeping beside him every night was systematically robbing him of nearly everything he owned. Throughout 2022, Surinya escalated her theft from amounts Eddie might potentially notice to systematic extraction of hundreds of thousands of dollars through schemes, so carefully constructed that Eddie had no reason to suspect anything was wrong. The first major theft involved property taxes and government fees. In February 2022, Surinya informed Eddie that the Thai government had implemented new property taxes for foreign residents. The annual tax would be 320,000 baht, approximately $10,000, and failure to pay would result in visa complications and potential property seizure. This is new policy from government, Surinya explained, showing Eddie official-looking documents entirely in Thai. Many expats are very upset about this tax, but we must pay or risk serious legal problems. I will handle payment at the revenue office. Eddie was frustrated by the unexpected expense, but accepted it as the reality of living in Thailand as a foreigner. He transferred the money to Surinya, and she returned a week later with receipts and official stamps supposedly confirming payment. What Eddie did not know was that no such property tax existed. The documents Surinya had shown him were sophisticated forgeries created by members of her network who specialized in producing fake government paperwork. The $10,000 had been divided between Surinya and her handlers, with Eddie receiving fake receipts to prevent him from questioning the expenditure. In April 2022, Surinya told Eddie the villa needed significant renovations to address structural issues that could worsen during the upcoming rainy season. The roof needed repairs, the foundation required reinforcement, the plumbing system had to be upgraded. The total cost would be 450,000 baht, approximately $14,000. I have received quotes from 3 construction companies, Surinya explained, showing Eddie documents with company letterheads and detailed cost breakdowns. This company has the best reputation and the most reasonable price. The work will take about 3 weeks, and they can start immediately if we approve. Eddie trusted Surinya's judgment about local contractors and approved the expenditure. Over the next 3 weeks, Surinya updated him regularly about the renovation progress, showing him photographs of workers supposedly repairing the roof and foundation. But the photographs were taken at different properties where legitimate renovations were occurring, and the construction company whose name appeared on the quotes did not actually exist. The $14,000 had been stolen, with Eddie receiving a carefully maintained illusion of legitimate home maintenance. The most lucrative scam involved gold jewelry. Thai culture places significant value on gold jewelry as both adornment and investment, and Sarinya convinced Eddie that purchasing gold for her was both a traditional expression of affection and a practical way to diversify their assets. Between May and August 2022, Eddie purchased approximately $200,000 worth of gold, necklaces, bracelets, and rings for Sarinya. In Thai culture, gold is how husbands show love and provide security for wives, Sarinya explained. It is not like Western jewelry. It is investment that holds value. If we ever need money for emergency, we can sell the gold. What Eddie did not know was that Sarinya was selling the gold pieces almost immediately after he purchased them, taking the cash proceeds and buying different gold pieces from cheaper sources that she would show Eddie as if they were the original items he had bought. Over 4 months, she converted $200,000 of Eddie's money into gold, sold it, and pocketed approximately $180,000, while Eddie believed the gold jewelry was safely stored in their home as a family asset. Sarinya also created fake family emergencies, requiring financial assistance. Her father supposedly needed expensive medical treatment, $50,000 for heart surgery. Her brother had business debts that needed to be paid immediately to avoid legal action, $30,000. Her mother's house needed repairs after storm damage, $20,000. Each emergency came with supporting documentation, hospital invoices, legal notices, contractor quotes, all sophisticated forgeries created by her network. Eddie sent the money for each emergency, believing he was helping Sarinya's family during genuine crises. He even felt good about his generosity, seeing it as evidence that he was finally part of a real family again, rather than existing in the isolated loneliness that had defined his post-divorce years in Chicago. What made Sarinya's theft particularly effective was her patience and her attention to maintaining Eddie's trust. She never asked for amounts so large that Eddie would feel compelled to investigate thoroughly. She always provided documentation that seemed legitimate if you could not read Thai or did not have access to verify authenticity. She maintained affectionate behavior and domestic routines that made Eddie feel cared for, even as she was robbing him. By December 2022, Sarinya had stolen approximately $500,000 from Eddie over 18 months of marriage. But Eddie's account statements did not reveal this clearly because Sarinya had structured the thefts as legitimate household expenses, property maintenance, cultural investments in gold, and family assistance. When Eddie reviewed his finances, he saw money being spent on things that seemed normal and reasonable for someone living in Thailand and supporting a Thai wife and her family. His liquid savings had declined from approximately $1 million to $500,000, but Eddie attributed this to the normal costs of maintaining a comfortable retirement lifestyle. He was not yet alarmed because he believed his major asset, the villa, was secure, and he assumed his remaining savings would last many more years if he continued spending at current rates. What Eddie did not understand was that his major asset was legally worthless to him because it was registered entirely in Sarinya's name, and the contract supposedly protecting his interests could be easily circumvented if Sarinya chose to sell the property without his knowledge. And the $500,000 he believed was safely invested in his American accounts was actually accessible to Sarinya through the account authorizations she had convinced him to establish. The systematic theft would continue throughout 2023, accelerating as Sarinya sensed Eddie was becoming slightly more aware of his declining savings and might soon demand a comprehensive accounting of their household finances. She would need to extract the remaining accessible funds quickly and then disappear before Eddie fully understood what had been done to him. But Sarinya had one vulnerability she had not anticipated: the household staff. The gardener and the maid were not part of her network. They were local Thai people who worked for Eddie, and they had gradually realized that Sarinya was stealing from the kind foreign man who paid their salaries generously. They had remained silent out of fear, but eventually the gardener's conscience would overcome that fear, leading him to write the note that would finally expose the truth to Eddie. Throughout 2023, Sarinya's theft escalated as she extracted the remaining accessible funds from Eddie's accounts while preparing her exit strategy. She began spending more time away from the villa, explaining to Eddie that her property agent work was becoming busier as the Thai economy recovered from COVID disruptions. "I have many clients looking at properties," Sarinya would tell Eddie. "Sometimes I need to show houses all day or meet clients for dinner in the evening. but I will always come home to you." Eddie accepted these explanations without suspicion. Sirinya had worked as a property agent when they met, and it made sense that her business would require time away from home. He was pleased that she had professional ambitions and was not just a housewife financially dependent on him. What Eddie did not know was that Sirinya's absences had nothing to do with property work. She was spending those times at a luxury villa in a different neighborhood of Hua Hin, a villa registered in her name and purchased with money stolen from Eddie and at least 2 other foreign men she was simultaneously scamming. The villa was larger and more expensive than Eddie's 5 bedrooms, private pool, ocean view. Sirinya lived there with another foreign man, a 68-year-old British retiree named Graham Thompson, who believed Sirinya was his devoted girlfriend and business partner. Graham had invested approximately £400,000 in what he thought were joint business ventures with Sirinya, including a restaurant and a tour company. Both businesses existed only on paper, and the money had been stolen just as systematically as Sirinya had stolen from Eddie. Sirinya had structured her life to manage multiple scams simultaneously. She would spend Monday through Thursday with Eddie, maintaining her role as dutiful wife. Friday through Sunday, she would tell Eddie she had property work in Bangkok or Pattaya and would stay at her sister's apartment in those cities. In reality, she would spend weekends with Graham at the luxury villa, maintaining her role as his loving girlfriend. The logistics required careful coordination. Sirinya used different phones for Eddie and Graham, ensuring they never accidentally saw communications meant for the other. She maintained separate social media accounts under slightly different names. She coordinated her schedule, so the 2 men never unexpectedly encountered her in public with the other. But maintaining 2 simultaneous long-term scams required help. Sirinya was part of an organized network that specialized in this type of fraud. The network provided her with fake business documents, forged government paperwork, and staged family emergencies. They helped launder the stolen money through shell companies and offshore accounts. They provided backup phones and mail forwarding services to help Sirinya maintain her separate identities. The network also provided security, watching for signs that either victim was becoming suspicious and might report Sirinya to police. When such signs appeared, the network would help Sirinya extract final accessible funds and disappear before victims could act. By mid-2023, Sirinya had stolen approximately $900,000 from Eddie and about £350,000 from Graham, a total of approximately $1,600,000 from the 2 men combined. She was preparing to exit both scams, planning to relocate to either Cambodia or Vietnam, where she would start the process again, with new victims and a new identity. But Sirinya had made one crucial mistake in her careful planning. The household staff at Eddie's villa, particularly the gardener named Somchai, had gradually realized what was happening. Somchai had been working for Eddie for nearly 2 years, and he had grown fond of the kind American man who paid fair wages and treated his staff respectfully. Somchai had seen suspicious things over those 2 years. He had overheard Sirinya speaking on the phone in Thai, discussing financial matters and referring to the American and the British man as if managing multiple sources of income. He had noticed official-looking documents left in trash bins that appeared to be forgeries when he examined them more closely. He had seen Sirinya's driving off in different cars at different times, suggesting she had more than one household. Most significantly, Somchai had followed Sirinya one day when she left supposedly to meet a property client. She had driven not to a property showing but to a luxury villa where a white-haired foreign man greeted her with affection. Somchai had observed them together through the villa's windows, cooking dinner together, laughing together, behaving exactly like Sirinya behaved with Eddie. Somchai faced a difficult moral dilemma. If he told Eddie what he knew, Sirinya would certainly fire him and probably retaliate against his family. Thai culture places significant importance on not interfering in other people's business, especially in matters between foreigners and Thai partners. Every other Thai person Somchai knew who worked for foreigners with Thai wives would advise him to stay silent and keep collecting his salary. But Somchai's conscience would not let him remain silent. Eddie was a good man who deserved to know the truth about the woman systematically destroying him. In August 2023, Somchai spent an evening carefully writing a note in his best English, warning Eddie about Sirinya's secret life. The next morning, while Sirinya was supposedly at a property showing, Somchai approached Eddie in the garden and quickly handed him the folded paper before walking away without making eye contact. His hands had been shaking, and he had clearly been terrified about the consequences of what he was doing. Eddie had opened the note and read the simple message that would finally expose the truth. Your wife has another house. She lives there on weekends with another foreign man. I am sorry to tell you this. Be careful. After reading Somchai's note, Eddie spent the rest of that day in a state of shock and denial. The accusation seemed impossible. Sarinya was his wife. They lived together. She managed their household. She had cared for him for nearly 3 years. How could she possibly be living with another man? But the more Eddie thought about it, the more details began to seem suspicious in retrospect. Sarinya's frequent weekend absences to supposedly show properties in Bangkok or Pattaya, the way she guarded her phone carefully and always stepped into another room to take certain calls. The fact that in 3 years of marriage, Eddie had never met any of her colleagues from the property agency or attended any work-related events with her. Eddie decided he needed to verify Somchai's claim before confronting Sarinya. The next Friday morning, when Sarinya announced she would be going to Bangkok for the weekend to show properties to potential buyers, Eddie told her he would miss her and would see her Monday evening. But after Sarinya left in her car, Eddie immediately called a taxi and told the driver to follow Sarinya's vehicle discreetly. The driver seemed unsurprised by this request. Apparently, following suspicious spouses was common work for Hua Hin taxi drivers. They followed Sarinya's car not toward the highway to Bangkok, but deeper into Hua Hin, to an upscale neighborhood near the beach, where villas cost millions of dollars. Sarinya pulled into the driveway of a large house with an ocean view, and Eddie watched from down the street as a white-haired foreign man, clearly in his late 60s, came out to greet her with a warm hug and a kiss. Eddie felt physically sick watching this interaction. The man was greeting Sarinya exactly the way Eddie greeted her when she returned home with obvious affection and familiarity. This was not a business relationship or a casual acquaintance. This was clearly a romantic partnership. Eddie told his taxi driver to take him home, and he spent the weekend in anguished confusion. Should he confront Sarinya immediately? Should he investigate further? Should he contact the police? He did not know what to do, and the betrayal was so complete that he struggled to think clearly about next steps. On Monday evening, Sarinya returned home as usual, cheerful and affectionate. Bangkok was so busy, she told Eddie. I showed 6 properties, and I think 2 clients are serious about making offers. How was your weekend? Eddie could not maintain the pretense. I know about the other house, he said quietly. I know about the other man. Somchai told me, and I followed you on Friday. I saw you with him. Sarinya's face went through several rapid transformations. Shock, calculation, and then sudden tears. Eddie, I can explain, she said, crying. That man is a client. I am helping him find a property, and he asked me to stay at his house for the weekend to give him advice about renovations. It is not what you think. There is nothing romantic between us. But Eddie no longer believed anything Sarinya said. Her explanation was obviously false. No property agent stayed at a client's house for weekends while greeting them with intimate affection. He demanded to see financial records for all the money he had given her over 3 years. The property taxes, the renovation costs, the gold jewelry purchases, the family emergency funds. Sarinya initially refused, claiming the documents were stored at her office. But when Eddie threatened to go to the police immediately, she reluctantly provided some paperwork. Eddie began examining the documents with the skepticism he should have applied from the beginning, and the fraud became increasingly obvious. Many documents were clearly forged inconsistent fonts, improbable official seals, addresses that did not exist. Eddie contacted his bank and discovered that Sarinya had made numerous large withdrawals from their joint account, that he had never authorized withdrawals totaling approximately $200,000 over 18 months. She had also used her access to his American bank account information to make transfers that he had not approved, moving money to Thai accounts he knew nothing about. The full scope of the theft was staggering. Over 3 years, Sarinya had stolen approximately $900,000 through a combination of fake expenses, fraudulent investments, hidden withdrawals, selling gold jewelry, and direct transfers from his accounts. Eddie's retirement savings had been reduced from $1,300,000 to approximately $400,000. But the property losses were potentially even worse. The villa Eddie lived in was registered entirely in Sarinya's name. Despite the contracts supposedly protecting his investment, Surinya legally owned the property and could sell it at any time. And Eddie now suspected the luxury villa where Surinya spent weekends with the other foreign man had been purchased partly with his own stolen money. Eddie immediately contacted the lawyer who had helped structure his villa purchase and explained the situation. The lawyer's assessment was devastating. Because the property is registered in her name, you have very limited legal recourse, the lawyer explained. The contracts you signed create moral obligations, but not strong legal protections. If she chooses to sell the property, preventing that sale will be extremely difficult. Your best option is probably to negotiate a settlement where she buys out your investment at some agreed-upon value. Eddie also filed a police report, bringing all the documentation he had discovered, but the police response was discouraging. The officer taking the report explained that much of what Surinya had done appeared to be legal on paper withdrawals from a joint account she was authorized to access, spending money that Eddie had voluntarily given her for various purposes, making purchases with his permission, even if she had lied about what those purchases were for. This looks like marriage problem, not clear criminal fraud, the officer said. You gave money to your wife. Your wife spent money in ways you did not approve. Very difficult to prosecute this as crime when transactions were voluntary and you are married. The officer did agree to investigate the forged government documents, but warned Eddie that even if forgery could be proven, recovering money would be nearly impossible if Surinya had already moved funds offshore or distributed them among her network. Over the next week, Eddie hired a private investigator who specialized in financial fraud. The investigator discovered the full extent of Surinya's operation. She had been running simultaneous scams on at least 3 foreign men: Eddie, the British man Graham, and a German retiree who had died 6 months earlier, under circumstances that now seemed suspicious. The investigator also discovered that Surinya Kittapong was probably not her real name, or at minimum it was just one of several identities she used. She was part of an organized network that had been operating for at least 5 years, with estimated total victim losses exceeding $5 million. She is very good at what she does, the investigator told Eddie bluntly. She targets intelligent, successful men who think they are too smart to be scammed. She builds long-term relationships rather than quick scams, which makes her harder to catch and harder to prosecute. And she has a network supporting her with professional quality forgeries, shell companies for money laundering, and offshore accounts that make tracing money nearly impossible. The investigator explained that Surinya would likely disappear within days or weeks now that she knew Eddie had discovered the fraud. She will empty any remaining accessible funds, abandon the properties that are in her name, but which might be legally complicated, and relocate to a different country, where she will start this process again with a new identity and new victims. Eddie felt completely destroyed. He had trusted Surinya with every aspect of his life in Thailand. He had believed she loved him, that they were building a future together, that she was the devoted wife who would make his retirement years comfortable and fulfilling. Instead, she had been systematically robbing him for 3 years while simultaneously running identical scams on at least 2 other men. The betrayal was so total, so skillfully executed, and so psychologically devastating that Eddie struggled to function. He had lost $900,000, more than 2/3 of his retirement savings. His villa might be sold out from under him since it was registered in Surinya's name. And his belief that he could ever trust another person had been shattered so completely that he could not imagine how he would rebuild any kind of normal life. Within 2 weeks of Eddie discovering the fraud, Surinya disappeared completely. She emptied the joint bank account, withdrew the maximum amounts possible from Eddie's other accounts using the access she had established, and vanished. The villa Eddie lived in remained registered in her name, but she apparently decided that trying to sell it would create too many legal complications, given that Eddie now knew about the fraud and would certainly challenge any sale. The luxury villa where Surinya had spent weekends with Graham was also abandoned. Graham, when Eddie managed to contact him, was going through his own devastating discovery process. He had trusted Surinya completely, had invested his retirement savings in business ventures she claimed they were building together, and had only learned she was married to Eddie when the investigator Eddie hired contacted him. "I thought I was special," Graham told Eddie during a painful phone conversation. "I thought she loved me, that we were building a future together. Learning that she was married to you the entire time, That she was living with you most of the week while telling me she was working in Bangkok, it destroyed something fundamental in me. I cannot trust my own judgment anymore. Eddie understood completely. The psychological damage was somehow worse than the financial losses. Both men had been comprehensively deceived for years by someone who had studied them carefully, identified their vulnerabilities, and exploited them with extraordinary skill. Eddie worked with his lawyer to attempt recovering something from the wreckage. The villa he lived in was technically Sarinya's property, but she had abandoned it and was unlikely to return to Thailand given the legal complications she now faced. The lawyer negotiated with Thai authorities to have the property placed in a legal trust that would allow Eddie to continue living there while ownership questions were resolved. You may eventually lose the villa entirely, the lawyer warned, but for now, you can remain here while we navigate the legal process. That is better than being immediately homeless. Eddie also pursued every possible avenue to recover stolen funds. He filed complaints with Thai police, American federal authorities, and international fraud investigation agencies. He provided all documentation to every agency that would take a report, but none of these efforts produced results beyond sympathy and warnings that recovery was unlikely. The investigator Eddie had hired found evidence that Sarinya had relocated to Cambodia, where she was reportedly already cultivating relationships with other foreign retirees under a different name. The network she was part of was too sophisticated and too internationally mobile for any single country's law enforcement to pursue effectively. These operations move faster than investigations can develop, the investigator explained. By the time authorities gather enough evidence to prosecute, the scammers have moved to different countries under different identities. Your best outcome is probably to recover whatever money is still traceable, maybe 10 to 15% of what you lost. Through intensive investigation and legal action over 6 months, Eddie did manage to recover approximately $60,000 funds that Sarinya had placed in a Thai bank account she forgot about or chose not to empty before fleeing. Combined with his remaining savings of approximately $400,000, Eddie had about $460,000 left from his original $1,300,000 retirement fund. It was enough to survive, but it was not the comfortable retirement Eddie had planned. He could no longer afford to maintain the villa even if he was allowed to remain there permanently. The property taxes, maintenance costs, and staff salaries consumed too much of his limited remaining capital. In early 2024, Eddie made the difficult decision to sell most of his possessions and leave Hua Hin. The villa's ownership remained contested, but Sarinya had apparently decided it was not worth the legal risk to try selling it. Eddie negotiated with Thai authorities to have the property transferred to a new buyer, with proceeds going into an escrow account that would be distributed once ownership questions were fully resolved. Eddie relocated to Chiang Mai, where cost of living was lower than Hua Hin, and where he would not be constantly reminded of the life he had tried to build with Sarinya. He rented a modest apartment and began volunteering with an expatriate legal aid group that helped foreign retirees navigate Thai law and avoid the scams that were endemic in areas with large expatriate populations. I want to help other people avoid what happened to me, Eddie told the group's coordinator when he first volunteered. I was successful in business, cautious with money, not some naive fool, but Sarinya understood exactly how to manipulate me. If it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. The volunteer work gave Eddie some sense of purpose, but it could not repair the psychological damage from Sarinya's betrayal. He suffered from depression and anxiety, struggled with insomnia, and found it nearly impossible to trust anyone. Simple interactions with service providers or new acquaintances triggered suspicion that they were trying to scam him. Eddie's son, Michael, who he had been estranged from since his divorce from Margaret, reached out after learning what had happened. Their conversation was difficult. Michael expressed sympathy but also frustration that Eddie had not consulted him before making major financial decisions in Thailand. "Dad, I know we have not been close," Michael said during a phone call, "but you had family who would have helped you think through these decisions. You went to Thailand alone, married someone you barely knew, and gave her access to everything. Why did you not talk to me before doing any of this?" Eddie did not have a good answer. He had been so desperate for companionship after years of loneliness that he had ignored basic caution. He had wanted to believe Sarinya was different, that his relationship with her was special, that love could happen in his 60s after failing so completely in his marriage to Margaret. "I thought I was building a new life," Eddie told his son. I thought I had finally found someone who valued me for who I was rather than just tolerating me like your mother did. I was wrong about everything. Michael suggested Eddie should consider returning to America, but Eddie could not bring himself to go back. Returning would mean admitting complete failure to everyone who knew him, confronting his ex-wife, who would probably feel vindicated about their divorce, and starting over at 63 with limited savings in a country with much higher living costs than Thailand. So Eddie remained in Chiang Mai, surviving on his reduced savings and his volunteer work, trying to help other expatriates avoid the fate he had suffered. He had joined online support groups for fraud victims and had connected with dozens of other men who had experienced similar devastation at the hands of Thai women or organized scam networks. The stories were remarkably consistent, intelligent, successful men who believed they were too smart to be manipulated, women who studied them carefully and exploited specific psychological vulnerabilities, systematic theft over extended periods, while maintaining perfect performances of devotion and care. The scams work because we want to believe, Eddie told other victims during online group discussions. We are lonely, we are desperate for connection, and these scammers understand exactly what we need to hear. They do not target stupidity, they target loneliness and hope, and those are vulnerabilities no amount of intelligence can completely protect against. Edward Collins is now 63 years old, living in a modest apartment in Chiang Mai, and volunteering with an expatriate legal aid organization that helps foreign retirees avoid scams and navigate Thai law. He has approximately $460,000 remaining from the $1,300,000 he had when he retired to Thailand, barely a third of his original retirement savings. He can survive on this amount if he lives carefully and modestly, but the comfortable retirement he had envisioned is permanently destroyed. He will need to continue monitoring his expenses closely, will never again be able to make major purchases or take expensive trips, and will live with the constant anxiety that any unexpected expense could devastate his precarious financial situation. But the financial damage, devastating as it is not the worst consequence of what Sarinya did to him. The worst damage is psychological. Eddie's ability to trust another person has been destroyed so completely that he struggles with even basic social interactions. When he meets someone new, he immediately looks for hidden motives and deceptive intentions. When anyone offers help or shows kindness, he suspects they are manipulating him towards some eventual scam. This hypervigilance makes normal relationships nearly impossible. Eddie has not dated anyone since Sarinya disappeared. He cannot imagine ever opening himself emotionally to another person after being so comprehensively betrayed by the woman he trusted most. The few times he has tried casual conversation with women he met through the expatriate community, his suspicion and emotional guardedness made connection impossible. I lost $1 million, Eddie tells other fraud victims when sharing his story. But worse, I lost the feeling that I could ever trust again. Every interaction now feels like a potential scam. Every friendly gesture seems calculated. Every person who is nice to me must want something. I cannot live normally anymore because Sarinya taught me that even the people who seem most trustworthy can be systematically destroying you while you believe they love you. Eddie has learned that Sarinya, or the woman he knew by that name, is reportedly still operating in Southeast Asia, having successfully relocated to Cambodia and then Vietnam, running similar scams on new victims under different identities. The network she works with has been linked to at least 20 documented victims over 7 years, with total estimated losses exceeding $8 million. None of the primary scammers have been arrested or prosecuted. These networks are too sophisticated and too mobile for law enforcement to pursue effectively, a fraud investigator told Eddie. They operate across international borders, use shell companies and offshore accounts, and move to new countries before investigations can develop. The best we can do is warn potential victims and hope they listen. Eddie's volunteer work with the legal aid organization is his attempt to prevent others from experiencing what he suffered. He speaks at expatriate meetings, writes articles for expatriate publications, and counsels newly arrived retirees about the sophisticated scams targeting older foreign men in Thailand. Most people listen politely, but dismiss his warnings. I am not like those other guys who fall for bar girl scams, they say. Exactly as Eddie once thought. My situation is different. My girlfriend is educated and professional. She would never use me like that. Eddie recognizes his own former naivety in these dismissals. He understands that no amount of warning will protect someone who desperately wants to believe they have finally found love and companionship. The psychological need to feel valued and connected is so powerful that it overwhelms rationality and caution. Eddie's relationship with his son Michael has improved slightly since the scam was exposed. Michael calls occasionally to check on his father, and they have had a few stilted conversations about Eddie's life in Chiang Mai. But the emotional distance that developed during Eddie's marriage to Margaret has not been bridged, and Michael makes it clear he cannot afford to provide financial support if Eddie's limited savings are eventually exhausted. Eddie thinks often about the gardener Somchai, whose warning note finally exposed Sarinya's fraud. Somchai had risked his job and potentially his safety to alert Eddie to the truth, driven by conscience and basic human decency. Eddie had wanted to thank Somchai properly and provide him with financial compensation for his courage, but Somchai had disappeared shortly after Sirinya fled, apparently too frightened of potential retaliation to remain in Hua Hin. That gardener showed more integrity than I had shown myself, Eddie reflects. He saw the truth and acted on it despite the risks. I saw warning signs for 3 years and rationalized them away because I wanted to believe Sirinya loved me. Wisdom would have been recognizing those signs and protecting myself. Instead, I waited until someone else's courage forced me to confront reality. Edward Collins came to Thailand at age 60, seeking peaceful retirement and companionship after decades of lonely existence following his divorce. He believed he had found both with Sirinya Kittapong, the intelligent and caring woman who seemed to offer exactly what he needed most. Instead, he found a professional criminal who studied him carefully, identified his vulnerability, his desperate need to feel valued and cared for, and exploited it with extraordinary patience and skill over 3 years. She stole $900,000 while maintaining such perfect control over his finances and communications that Eddie never suspected anything until a brave gardener risked everything to warn him about the truth. At 63, Eddie lives alone in Chiang Mai with limited savings, damaged psychology, and the awareness that he will probably never again be able to open himself emotionally to another person. The comfortable retirement he had worked his entire life to achieve has been replaced by cautious survival and volunteer work, warning others about the sophisticated scams that destroyed him. I thought I was smart enough, experienced enough, cautious enough to protect myself, Eddie says when sharing his story with newly arrived expatriates. I was wrong. The scammers who operate here are smarter than you, more patient than you, and more skilled at psychological manipulation than you can imagine. They do not target stupidity, they target loneliness and hope. And if you are here looking for companionship after years of isolation, you have exactly the vulnerabilities they know how to exploit. Eddie pauses, looking out at the mountains surrounding Chiang Mai, the beautiful landscape that was supposed to be the backdrop for his peaceful retirement. Trust but verify. Protect your assets legally. Never give anyone total control over your finances. And understand that if something seems too good to be true, if someone seems to love you and value you in ways that feel almost miraculous after years of loneliness, it probably is too good to be true. Because real love does not require you to destroy yourself financially to prove your devotion. If this story has opened your eyes to the sophistication of organized romance fraud in Thailand, please subscribe to this channel. Edward Collins's experience represents a particularly insidious category of scam long-term financial infiltration by professional criminals who exploit loneliness and trust rather than obvious greed. These scams succeed because victims never suspect they are victims until it is far too late. Share this story with anyone planning to retire overseas. And remember, love should never require you to give someone total control over your finances and communications. Thank you for watching, and please protect yourself and those you care about.